everyone. Welcome back to Deep Images. We are continuing our series on crime films. Joining me for this session are co-host C.F. Roberts and panelists Rhiannon Clark, Briggy Williams, and Justin Cotton, or as we're sometimes called behind the scenes, the New Friday Five. It's like we're a band or something. Anyway, enjoy. Thank you for watching. So you're fine, yeah.
So Jagged Edge, if you haven't heard of it, it's 1985. It's a neo-noir crime thriller with Glenn Close, and Jeff Bridges is in it. If you've heard of it, has anyone heard of that movie before?
I have not seen it.
I believe I have. I may have seen it.
It's actually really good. I thought it was really good. I didn't expect it to be as exciting, intriguing, so many twists, so many different, very multi-layered. So Jeff Bridges is in it, Glenn Close, Peter Coyote is in it, and Michael Dorn. Do you know who Michael Dorn is? He's in it, which is so cool. He's like a very young. Cool. I think it was before he I think it was probably like his next role then was playing Worf in Star Wars. Excuse me, in
early '90s.
This is '85.
Oh, so this is before the first Star Trek Next Generation.
So it was '85 that he was in this movie, but takes place in San Francisco. Glenn Close is a corporate lawyer. She used to work for. Worked for district attorney, who was Peter Coyote character, was sort of the head guy, and they had a falling out. But the movie sort of opens up with like a murder of this very rich heiress, of a newspaper heiress, and she's killed in her beach house, like horribly killed and tied up, and this masked guy has like this long, it's like a 6-inch blade with a jagged edge, and so he kills her, and then he writes above the headboard "bitch" in her blood, and so it's
got some problems, man.
So it's really it's sort of really kind of opens up like that, and then of course the Jeff Bridges character, because he's so suave and handsome and all that, of course you're going to talk, the spouse has got to be the person who did it, like that's all there is to it. So but because he's so rich and he can hire whoever he wants, I'm not going to get into the weeds about it, but I will say that he winds up hiring Glenn Close, who does not want to take this job because she left the prosecutor's office because of a discrepancy. There was a case that they were trying maybe like a year or two earlier, and the head prosecutor, the Peter Coyote character, buried evidence, sent this guy to jail. And then Glenn Close was after she discovered that he had done this, she left the office and then became a corporate lawyer. But so in the interim, Jeff Bridges says, "Look, I want this woman to represent me." And so she says, "Okay, I'll come back, but it's got to be under these conditions. This is what it has to be. Did you kill your wife?" He's like, "No." But so she takes on the case, but as they get to know each other, he begins to woo her. They have a natural chemistry, and that's where the sex comes in, and it's very steamy. It's very, look, this is the '80s, so we're not going to be uptight about it the way we are today.
No, but, we've been talking about sex this whole series. You missed some,
right? Well, yeah, these types of movies lend themselves to that because there is that sort of push and pull, yin and yang between, sex, and then that sort of, Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But
I'm from Ireland, right? I'm from Ireland. Ireland is a very Catholically repressed place.
Yes.
Yes. I'm half Italian, so but I'm a very passionate person, so I always felt like my actual being was opposed to the energy of my surroundings.
Oh, that's how
it's
I
nice
felt
to be amongst people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who are embrace sexuality.
Oh, well, that's good. I love that. I think, why not? Why not? And I'm Black, so you know where that goes. Okay, so anyway, so they get together and they hook up and they begin a relationship, which is completely like it's a no-no. It should be, if you're representing someone, because your judgment is clouded. But it turns out
Absolutely.
that oh, sorry, someone's trying to call me. It turns out that he they bring people to the case that he actually did have an affair with, and then it's discovered that there was a crime committed in the same exact way, maybe like 18 months earlier, but the woman wasn't murdered. Something happened to startle the intruder, and then he ran off. So she was also put on the stand. So they're trying to build this case to say this guy did it, and now her judgment is clouded. So she's not really sure what to believe after she hears evidence that comes in. But at some point, I'm trying not to give stuff away, but at some point, the detective that she works with kept saying that he did it, but she didn't believe him, um, and he gets off. Like he's free. Like they discover he wasn't the person who did it. But throughout the case, somebody is sending these anonymous letters on this typewriter, and they find out like who that person was that was sending these letters, that was kind of pushing her in the direction of the case. But they find out later on who that person was, and it has this sort of very noir sort of energy to it. um, it has a very it's very 80s in the way it's shot. Glenn Close, of course, because they're so young, and you see them now, and it's like I had no idea they were that young. The way they look, the way they were styled. It's a really well done movie, but there's a lot of intrigue, tension between the characters. The acting is really, really good, but you just don't know where the movie is going to take you. Again, it's very multi-layered in that once you believe you know who the murderer is, then it takes you in a different direction. And did he kill his wife for the money? It turns out that he was not born into money, but he sort of worked his way up from the mailroom, and then became like, she wound up marrying this very rich woman, and she was found murdered for reasons that will be revealed in the movie. So I don't know if I've said enough about it, but I just didn't want to give too much of it away. But I would suggest strongly watching this movie. I think people really enjoy it. So that's my take. But before I go, hold on. But I want to tell you about the director though, because I looked into the director, because sometimes I like to do that, because if they're doing a movie that had high acclaim, they may have done something else. I don't think studios would just give like this type of movie to anyone. But it was Richard Marquin, and he did space opera, and then he also did Return of the Jedi, the last of the original trilogy.
Oh, okay.
So he did that, and then he also
Richard
did Eye of the Needle as well. Are you familiar?
I saw that in the theater.
Right. Yeah. He also did that, and then I believe he also did the Pelican Brief.
Oh, okay.
As well, which all those are really good movies. So maybe those movies people could dig into that. But I think the fact that he's able to go across so many different genres and different storylines, and one movie does not seem like, it's not like he has a thing, sort of like a Quentin Tarantino, like, oh, that's a Quentin Tarantino movie. You know what I mean? He's able to move seamlessly between different story arcs, storylines, and so, but that's me right now.
That's awesome. So
yeah,
I want to see if Rhiannon would like to present a film first, but first I want to say please like and subscribe.
Please. Oh, please like and subscribe.
We really need the help badly. Help us out. Help a brother in need, sister. All right, so the floor is yours, madam.
Thank you. Yeah, these amazing films will draw the people in, because these are great picks. They're not just, as you say, they're not just movies that everyone watches all the time. It's not really extremely mainstream movies. So I love the fact that we're picking some interesting topics, interesting
Definitely.
flicks for people. And so I picked Copland to watch, and it's 1997, and the director is James Mangold. And I heard that he did a lot of movies after this that were very famous. Girl Interrupted, Walk the Line, Ford versus Ferrari, and Wolverine. And you're saying Logan.
Logan, yeah.
Logan. But I was just really impressed with this movie, that it was jam-packed full of extremely big stars. This movie, Copland, I think there was a cast of 60 people in the movie.
Wow.
And do you know what I mean? About 60 people in the film. And so, yeah, it starts off with Robert De Niro narrating. And he's got a great sense of humor in his voice. He's very personable. He draws you in with his voice, so you're with the movie straight away because it's Robert De Niro speaking to you, and he's talking about, there's a place called COPLAND, which is a bunch of cops that are the New York City Police Department, but they're outside of the jurisdiction. So they're in New Jersey rather than in New York. So there's a pub in Copland called the Four Aces, and they all hang out in the Four Aces, and it's like it's a world. They're building a world at the start. So so you're brought into the world, and I feel like the main character is Sylvester Stallone, and he plays a character who's kind of like a schlub. It's kind of like a schlubbish character. Am I fair to say that he's kind of schlubby?
Oh yeah.
We won't cancel you.
Yeah. No. Okay. Cool. I'm not afraid. Okay.
Good.
I'm not afraid of that anyway. But yeah. So. But you see all the people in the Four Aces, and they're kind of, you can see that the cops, they're kind of like, it's kind of corrupt. You can see it at the start already. That Freddy, he's like about to drive home drunk or whatever. Sylvester Stallone's character is about to drive home drunk, and he says, "Are you able to drive?" And he's obviously clearly not. So starts off with like just kind of minor corruption or whatever, like just that's Freddy. But then it goes into we move forward then into the, see that, okay, I literally have like a list of characters because there's 60 people in this movie, so I have to refer to the list here.
I know there's 4 or 5 really, really big kind of crime movie standard people that are in it,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
There is Edie Falco. She's in the bar from Sopranos.
It was before the Sopranos, I believe.
Before the Sopranos, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Patrick, Terminator 2.
Mm-hmm.
He's in it.
He is.
Michael Rappaport, who was also mentioned earlier.
Oh, well, I was talking about a different Michael Rappaport, but yeah. There's actually 2 of them.
Oh, okay.
One of them played the Greasy Strangler under a different name, Michael LaMichael or something. and then he's an old guy. And then Michael Rappaport's the New York guy who kind of has gone crazy in real life now. But go ahead. Yeah, he did act a lot in the 90s. Yeah.
That's wild. It's not a kind of name that you'd expect there to be 2 of.
I know, that was weird. I think that's why the older Michael, changed it with the SAG. You can't have the same exact name as another Actors Guild person generally. You can put an initial in it or something to distinguish it. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Then it goes into we see the bar, we see where everybody hangs out or whatever. But then, and Sylvester Stallone, he drives home drunk and he smashes into a tree, and then he gets home safely, which is nice. I'm glad he does. Because I don't know, he's kind of lovable. He's got a kind of
Yeah.
lovable energy. Mike, I think he's got a lovable energy.
Sad, lovable
Sylvester
loser.
Stallone.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one.
he's playing against type though. You thought he'd be like jump in the middle of all these corrupt cops and like shoot him with a machine gun or something and scream, but it's totally against type for him. So and it actually works, you know, in my opinion.
So it's going out of his comfort zone as an actor. So it
Right.
kind of shows his acting ability. Actually,
Yeah.
it does. I think.
Yeah.
And then we go into Michael Rappaport's character. His name is Superboy, and he's a cop. And Superboy is his nickname or whatever.
Okay.
Murph is his
Forgot
name.
that.
Yeah, yeah. And he's going down the road and he sees a bunch of black guys in a car and he assumes they're criminals or whatever. And they pull like a stick on him, but it's not. I don't think it's very well shot, so I didn't realize it wasn't a gun. But then I looked again. On the second time I watched it, oh, it wasn't a gun. So and also glass hit the wheel of his car, and then like so he put all of these things together and he decides that they're people who are supposed like deserve to die or whatever, so he goes after them, tails them and shoots them to death or whatever. And yeah, it's a big scene, and
it's pretty realistic.
A huge furore amongst people. Yeah, it was very realistic.
I mean, if you live in America,
in fact, actually, yeah,
since that movie was made, that what you're talking about happens all the time. It's an absolute crime against humanity. They shot Tamir Rice because he had a toy truck.
Just assuming.
It's like
assuming, like it's terrible. Like
it is. It is.
Yeah, I think this is a good movie about the topic of race war.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, it's a good. It's done really well. I think it's dealt with very sensitively. And there's at the scene of the crime, the medic, who is a black man, he sees that Robert Patrick's character, who's kind of like a dodgy, corrupt cop, swap the toy gun for an actual gun. So like, and then the medic is like incensed. He's furious because obviously he's trying to frame like the black guys who have actually been killed or whatever. So like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's injustice basically, and rightly so. The African guy, black guy, is like, the medic is very upset about it, like because it hits deep because all of this corruption happens too often. So then it cuts to sorry, looking at the list of names here. Sorry, Harvey Keitel's character. Sorry,
I was going to say he's one of the main characters, if I'm correct. Yeah, one of the bigger names.
Keitel.
Yeah,
a big face in Hollywood. Big guy in the crime scene in the mob world.
Yes.
Yeah, in the crime world, Harvey Keitel, and he's playing a bad guy in this kind of a dodgy, corrupt cop. He's kind of like the head of them. He's kind of like the head of the. He's the leader, the ringleader, kind of. I think he's the ringleader. They all kind of look to him, they kowtow to him. But he says that he jumped, Superboy jumped or whatever, and so there's this plan to like. Then after that, everybody assumes that he actually died, and nobody really investigates it. And I don't know how far you want. Will I go into the full plot?
No, you don't have to go into the full plot, but what how does it? What's the direction? And remind me what De Niro does in the movie, because I've totally forgotten. I know he was like the biggest star, but it seems like he wasn't really as focused on that much. But I could be misremembering, possibly.
Well, he plays a cop called Mo Tilden, and Mo Tilden is a guy who wants to get to the truth of things. He wants to get to the truth of what really happened. And I love his character.
Okay.
But at the same time, he is not the main character, even though you'd think he would be. Sylvester Stallone is the main character, and he has he's kind of like, I noticed that a couple of times I saw that there was a turtle, like a teddy bear of a turtle in the movie, and so I saw this turtle as being his kind of spirit guide somehow.
Stallone?
Because he's really slow. Yeah, in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
He's really slow. Slow about acting on things. He observes everybody. He's the sheriff. And he's the sheriff who wasn't allowed to get on the force, the New York City Police Department, because he actually saves a lady when he's a teenager. He jumps into the water to save a lady, and then his eardrum bursts when he's trying to save a lady. And so that's the reason he's not allowed to get on the force or whatever. So,
okay. What's the kitty? Who's the kitty cameo? Chuck.
Which?
This is Presto. Presto, you want to say hi to everybody? Hey, buddy.
You're missing this, Briggy. What a sweetie.
He doesn't do this.
I'm looking at you. I'm like, his name is Presto?
Yeah.
Presto, like Presto Changeo?
Yep.
You know, like Presto Changeo.
Huh?
You know, like I'm sorry. I'm saying Presto, like Presto Changeo. You know.
Yes.
Like,
yes. That's his
rabbit
name.
Out of a hat.
Yeah, that's it. Prestidigitation.
Yeah.
It was actually Preston when we got him, but we thought, we don't really like to change it to Preston.
It was Preston.
He's magic.
Yeah.
So, I love it.
So Rhiannon of Stallone, you said he's very sluggish.
Oh yeah.
So what is his arc? Where's he going with all this? What's his reaction to all this?
Well, basically, his arc is that he's upset that he didn't get on the force because he his eardrum was burst or whatever by the fight, by the saving the young lady when he was a teenager or whatever. But because he was disabled in such a way, it actually made him the most perfect person to observe everybody and to observe the corruption on the force. And so he becomes an unlikely hero of the piece, you know. And I think Ray Liotta's character, his character serves to kind of fire up his assertiveness or whatever, bring out the animal, bring out the beast in Freddy, in Sylvester Stallone's character, Freddy. And he's kind of like, you know, like act, do something, you know. He's the kind of guy pushing Freddy to actually act. And like towards the end, he does act though. He does act, and people are surprised. That's all I'm going to say. But people are surprised.
Yeah, they underestimate him.
He acts. They totally underestimate him. Yeah, he's an unlikely hero, and like that, his spirit animal is totally the turtle, because he takes ages to to make a move, but when he does, he makes a move.
Slow but sure.
Yeah, indeed. There's also a love arc in the movie. There's a love interest, and he takes ages with that as well, you know, and it you don't know whether or not he gets with the lady in the end or whatever, but I assume that he just keeps trying like a turtle.
Who plays the love interest? Is that Edie Falco?
Or
a different actress?
Annabelle Sciorra.
Oh,
yes, exactly. That is exactly who it is.
Oh,
yeah, very beautiful lady.
Yeah, I had an interaction with her recently on Messenger. We'll get into another time. Tried to get her to do an interview, but wow, she's way out of our league. Way out of our league. But yeah, that same woman, yes, Annabelle Sciorra. So.
And there's another lady in the movie as well, Cindy Betts. She's another sheriff, and Gina Garofalo.
Oh yeah,
what's her name?
She's gorgeous.
Janine Garofalo, yeah.
Janine Garofalo, yes, beautiful woman. And Robert Patrick's character is very misogynistic towards her in the movie and calls her cupcake or whatever. And it's like, you know, just, you know what I mean? Pat her on the ass and just like
suave dude.
Send her on her way kind of type dude.
Send her on her way.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, no. In the end, she's like, I'm leaving this job. This is not worth it, you know. But
now, doesn't Garofalo's character get along with Stallone's character? Don't they work together in some capacity?
They do. They do get on.
It's coming back to me.
but at the same time, he's not very assertive, so he can't stand up for her. I think that's why you get frustrated with Stallone's character at first, because he could have just said, "Oh, that's inappropriate,"
Right.
but but he's still kind of like the dominance of the gang kind of has taken him in or whatever. Like he's let himself be taken in by the dominance of the gang because he wants acceptance, but then he decides he doesn't need their acceptance when he realizes they're so corrupt, and then he's like, no. That's as far as I'm going to say. I'm not going to say any more on it because I want people to enjoy the movie. Yeah.
Any final thoughts? Anyone else seen it besides me? And I'm assuming CF and Sir Roberts has seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. Fantastic story.
I'm not a Stallone fan, but it was good.
I remember when it came out, but I didn't. I remember when it came out, but I didn't see it.
No.
It was kind of one of those movies that Mangold was he was kind of an indie director, and then that was one of the first ones where he kind of worked with a more Hollywood, a studio kind of thing, which is what he does now. He's pretty good about choosing his material, though, like we talked about.
It's well worth a repeat viewing. That's what I'll say, because it took me a few times to get all the different bits and pieces of it. Like there's so many characters in it that I kind of observed a different character a little bit more each time I watched it. So yeah, cool. I'd
excellent.
People watch it.
Excellent.
I enjoyed it.
So the film I'm actually going to review is it's a film I haven't seen for about 15 plus years in full, but I did see it then. I rewatched it last night, called Road to Perdition, with starring a great cast actually. Tom Hanks as Michael Sullivan, who's the central character. Paul Newman, actually, I don't know if it was one of his last roles, but Paul Newman was the leader of this Irish Catholic gang, I think from Boston, called John Rooney. Daniel Craig, in one of his first films, played John Rooney's son, Connor Rooney. So he's kind of the closest you get to a villainous character, I suppose. Well, they're all villainous, I guess, but the most evil antagonist, I suppose, in the film.
Right.
A very young Tyler Hoechlin is Michael Sullivan Jr., who's Tom Hanks' son, because I know him more as an adult in his acting. And Jude Law also is in there as a guy called Maguire, who's a kind of very strange, eccentric, oddball sort of character who's a photographer who takes photos of dead bodies. But he's also effectively an assassin working for Al Capone's gang. So he was good in it as well. And it's directed by Sam Mendes, who's one of my favorite directors, who directed American Beauty. More recently, one of my favorite British films recently, Empire of Light. So Sam Mendes has directed this film, and you can kind of see his touch throughout the film. And it had a really nice sort of a piano score throughout the film, which is to the forefront of my favorite scene of the film, probably about 15 minutes from the end. Stanley Tucci also is a huge cast. Stanley Tucci, looking quite young, was Mr. Nitti, who's in Chicago working for Al Capone's gang.
Frank Nitti, yeah.
Frank Nitti, yeah. So he mentions Al Capone a couple of times. You never actually see Al Capone in the film, but Frank Nitti, I believe, is obviously working for Capone.
He was his big enforcer, in real life.
Right, so it's a real life character.
Yeah.
So just a loose summary of the plot. I won't go into too much entrails of the whole thing, but they assassinate a guy who's fallen out with the Irish gang. That is the character of Connor Rooney, Daniel Craig, and also Tom Hanks as well as there at the time. But unbeknown to Michael Sullivan, which is Hanks's character, his son Michael Sullivan Jr. has hid out on the back of the car because he's curious to see what line of work his dad is in. So he sees this guy being assassinated, and this guy's henchman being assassinated by his dad, Michael Sullivan, and also Connor Rooney, played by Daniel Craig. So that's where, this is about 15 minutes into the film, this is where the issues start to arise. and I was struck by the complete lack of loyalty shown to Michael Sullivan, basically. But he basically, Connor Rooney says, well, is your son going to keep a secret? Can he keep a secret? And Michael Sullivan says, well, he's my son, and Connor Rooney says, well, that's good enough for me, and walks away into the rain. But I think there's also a bit of a jealousy motivation too for Connor Rooney, because I think he was jealous of the closeness between Hanks's character Michael Sullivan and Paul Newman's character, who's effectively the godfather of the Irish gang, which is Mr. Rooney. So you see, there's a scene where they're both playing piano near the start of the film. Both Hanks's character and Newman's character are on the same piano, playing this Irish song on the piano, which they do perfectly. And Connor Rooney's looking quite, he's got a big grin on his face, but I think he's actually quite jealous of the relationship. And I think father-son type relationships are quite central to this film, because Mr. Rooney effectively sees Michael Sullivan as a surrogate, almost, a son that it's not actually his son, but like his son. So the next thing you know, Connor Rooney is masterminding a hit to try and kill Michael Sullivan's son, because he's worried that he's going to talk, or he thinks that he's going to talk to somebody, and the assassination will be revealed. But he bursts into the house, shoots Michael Sullivan's wife and youngest son, not the son, the older son that actually witnessed the killing. And then you end up with a situation where Michael Sullivan and Michael Sullivan Jr. are effectively on the run. But at the same time, there's a revenge motive throughout the film, in that Michael Sullivan wants to basically kill the man that killed my family, or half my family. He goes to Chicago and asks Frank Nitti if he can work for Frank Nitti's gang, which is Al Capone's gang, in return for turning a blind eye to what I have to do. And Frank Nitti says, well, what do you have to do? And he said, well, I need to kill the man that killed my wife and son.
Of course.
And Frank Nitti basically says, well, that's not going to happen, and I suggest it's not in our interest. We have to act in our own interests. And
not in our interest.
Is that a no? And he said, well, you expect me to just go back home? And he said, yeah, I think you should just go back home. But unbeknownst to him, to Michael Sullivan, Mr. Rooney and Connor Rooney are in the next room listening to this conversation. They've also traveled to Chicago. And the deal was that Al Capone's gang will actually provide safe haven for Connor Rooney in Chicago, in this hotel. Meantime, Connor Rooney is encouraging John Rooney to, he's in the building. You've got to assassinate. You've got to take him out. You've got to take him out. But there's a reluctance, obviously, on the part of Mr. Rooney Sr. to actually do anything in relation to Michael Sullivan, other than to encourage him to, I think, go to Ireland, or to travel to Ireland and basically take his older son with him and leave the country. Yeah. And then there's a bit of the middle part of the film was a bit more complex. What I gathered from that was that Michael Sullivan and his son, he teaches his son how to drive this old vintage car, as they had in 1931 when the film was set. And that's the sort of comedic moments of the film, is when he's teaching his son how to drive, as in like a getaway car. And they rob a few banks. I think there were banks where there were accounts held by Al Capone's gang. And this was just a way of getting leverage, because he kind of figured out that Capone's gang was shielding or harboring Connor Rooney. And then 3/4 of the way through the film, he manages to get hold of the accounts from the gang's accountant, and finds out somehow that there's these various accounts that have been opened by Connor Rooney, where he's been siphoning money away from the gang for his own personal purposes.
Bezzler.
Yeah. So there's a meeting then towards the end of the film where Michael Sullivan talks to John Rooney and says, don't you realize your son is actually ripping you off? He's betraying you. I found all these accounts that he set up where monies have been siphoned off into. And John Rooney says, look, I already know about this, but I'm not going to be taking action against my own son. And he again reiterates that he should leave the country, take his son, and go elsewhere. So that then leads off to probably one of my favorite parts of the film, where there's this very misty, rainy scene outside O'Neill's Irish bar in Boston, I think it is, where Paul Newman and his gang of about 5 or 6 people leave this bar, and they go to the car, but the driver's slumped in the seat and he's dead. See, Michael Sullivan has access to quite a good machine gun, and he starts firing from the shadows, and you just see these guys getting cut down on the street, and then eventually it's just John Rooney standing there, sort of by his door, looking down, and he turns around as Michael Sullivan's approaches, and he says, "I'm glad it's you." So, in other words, he's saying, if I'm going to die, I'm glad it was you who basically took me out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And throughout that scene, the piano score is playing, so it's a very effective scene. And then after he's shot down Paul Newman's character, which then happens, of course. Michael Sullivan looks up and sees all these people looking out the window, all the residents in this nearby building, as they're looking behind the curtains. And you're sort of left with the impression as well, maybe this is what they came to expect in Boston or Chicago in the early 30s, when this kind of thing would possibly go down in the street.
Yeah.
There's also quite a touching moment between his younger son, Michael Sullivan, and Tom Hanks, where there's a sort of a distance between them at the start of the film and throughout the film. And the son says, "Well, why, Pa, did you treat me differently to my younger brother?" And I always felt like you treated me differently. And Michael Sullivan says, "Well, I didn't mean to treat you differently. I just that your younger brother's just a sweet boy, whereas you, the older one, I sort of felt was more like me, and I didn't want you to be like me." So, so there's quite a nice, sweet moment between the two of them, because obviously the son almost feels bad about setting off this train of events, because he witnessed the assassination in the first stanza of the film, and then that's what prompted the attempt to assassinate the son, which led to the mother and the younger son being killed, and him and his dad going on the run. So throughout the film, Michael Sullivan has to assure none of this is your fault. None of this is your fault. You know, if anything, it's my fault for being in this line of business. Right at the end of the film, when you think it's wrapping up, Michael Sullivan and his son go to this beach area where there's a beach house. And of course, at the end, without giving too much away, Jude Law's character, the assassin, shows up. And there's a bit of a confrontation at the end, which you don't expect. I mean, I expected it last night because I'd seen the film before, but I remember when I first watched the film in about 2003 or so, I was, that scene was quite shocking because it was a bit of a twist at the end of the film. I won't give too much away about that, but there's another moment there that goes to the sort of father-son type relationship. And then at the end of the film, the son, who's then goes to the home of this old couple who live in the country, who had actually put them up as boarders for a while, when in a sort of half an hour before that in the film, Michael Sullivan had been injured by a bullet or two in the shoulder. So they went to this house to sort of be looked after initially, and then harboured for about, I gather, a number of weeks. So the son ends up at that house, and the suggestion is at the end of the film that this old couple who don't have children of their own will take on Michael Sullivan Jr. as effectively their son.
Oh, okay.
To live at the farm. So I'm probably not giving too much away towards this panel, because I'm pretty sure most people have probably seen the film on this panel, but
I have not seen it all the way through, but I do have some interesting questions for you about it. I'm going to test your deep knowledge of this movie. So there's a lot of things that has in common with what Rhiannon covered recently, which was a history of violence, because this is also based on a graphic novel. So more evidence that, comic book movies are not necessarily superheroes, folks. A lot of people dismiss all, and it's like they've been making major movies based on comics in Japan for like 70 years. So, there's no stigma there. So this is based on a graphic novel by Max Allan Collins, who, is a big comic book writer and also he wrote the Dick Tracy comic strip for a number of years. He kind of did a lot of columns on comics and stuff. I think he wrote some Batman, and he's kind of a wiseacre kind of guy. Perfect for this kind of material, this kind of noirish gangster kind of thing. But I want to read you something on Wikipedia. There's another layer to it that we should definitely mention. So, under the topic Lone Wolf and Cub. So Lone Wolf and Cub, I'm pretty sure Chuck or Richard, one of you guys covered it, right? I know under anti-heroes, or maybe it was.
I believe it was Richard. May have been Richard. It wasn't me, but I am familiar with it.
Yeah, you were there. Okay, yeah. So Lone Wolf and Cub is a trope. It has become a trope within fiction because that comic started at like the very end of the 1960s. Kazuo Koike was the writer, and Hideki Kojima was the artist. And I always get his first name wrong. But anyway, so in this little write-up on Lone Wolf and Cub, well, it's actually very long. It says Lone Wolf and Cub has been cited as the origin for the narrative trope / genre where a man protects a child on a journey across a dangerous landscape, like Logan by Mangold. Known as the Lone Wolf and Cub. Huh?
It's definitely a trope. It comes up a few times. Yeah.
So it has an official name among film critics. So since we're all serious film critics, we got to know this stuff. So it's actually a Lone Wolf and Cub trope. It has its own entry here.
Wow.
So it encompasses things such as Leon the Professional, Logan, Stranger Things, The Witcher, Last of Us. Yeah, Last of Us is where Pedro Pascal protects the kids from the zombies or whatever. See, I've never even seen it. I already played the video game, but I know like the whole plot. I'm not sure what that says about me or about Last of Us. You can decide. And then it talks about how there's some anime influence, obviously other Japanese things. So here's where we get novelist Max Allan Collins acknowledged the influence of Lone Wolf and Cub on his graphic novel Road to Perdition, 1998. In an interview to the BBC, Collins declared that Road to Perdition is an unabashed homage to Lone Wolf and Cub. In turn, speaking of the devil, writer Neil Druckmann cited Road to Perdition as a direct influence on The Last of Us video game and television show. I'd not remember what I said a minute ago, and now I didn't even read this till now. The Last of Us actor Pedro Pascal cited Lone Wolf and Cub as the origin of the trope of a man protecting a child on a journey across the dangerous landscape. So, and I discerned that was the plot of Last of Us from seeing like three stills. Now, that either means movie's beautifully communicating on a simple level, or it's a little too simple, predictable. But I haven't seen the video game or the show, so I'm not going to judge one way or another. But I knew, obviously, I didn't know there was a direct link. I didn't know any of these creators. I knew Max Allan Collins acknowledged it. I didn't know these other people acknowledged that they were influenced by Road to Perdition or Lone Wolf and Cub. So Road to Perdition is a remake of Lone Wolf and Cub Sword of Vengeance from the early 70s, directed by Kenji Musumi, and which I highly recommend. The second one's even better. Baby Cart at the River Styx is some of the most absolutely out of control, outrageous, violent swordplay, just to the point of absurdism. I mean, there's spray. It started the whole spraying arterial sprays of blood, when people get their limbs severed, and but in that one, Itogami, who we covered on this channel, Itogami and his son Daigoro, they're the anti-heroes. We covered anti-heroes. So they're the patterns for the Michael Sullivan characters. Does that make sense, Justin?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Yeah. So, we can certainly see that. Another one would be I saw The Dark Tower. It's got Idris Elba in it. It's from the Stephen King novel. And there was a Lone Wolf and Cub type trope in that one as well. This? The Dark Tower. It's the film wasn't that great, I have to say, but I like Idris Elba in anything pretty much. Good. So he was good in it. I just thought the film could have been a bit better, but I like Stephen King, and I have read some of The Dark Tower.
I think that's probably his most ambitious work, from what little I've read of it. But
that reminds me of the Lone Wolf and Cub trope as well. And that's certainly a big part of this film. I think the central relationship between father-son relationship, but also this other father-son relationship or surrogate son between Paul Newman's character. Paul Newman was great in it, I have to say, and also Michael Sullivan Sr. Whereas the Connor, played by Daniel Craig, was sort of a black sheep, and it was a source of you can see it was a source of much frustration to Paul Newman's character.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I saw his James Bond movies. Just a lot of frustration. No, I'm kidding.
That's right.
I didn't care for him as James Bond. I mean, no offense to anyone. I don't hate him or anything. Somebody accused me of hating him the other day. I can't remember if it was you, Justin, or Tim, jokingly said, "You hate Daniel Craig." I'm like, no, I don't hate Daniel Craig. I just was like,
you're jealous. You're
I
jealous
think he's.
of him.
Here we go again with this.
There's only one Roger Moore.
You're jealous. I understand.
I'm not jealous. I mean, there's money. Yes. There's nothing about Daniel Craig that I find remotely physically or attractive or his acting or anything about him. Not charismatic whatsoever. He's like a blank zero to me. He's in the right role with the right director.
You told him. I thought he was good in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Did you like that?
Well, I shied away from it because, again, we're doing an unnecessary remake of a great movie.
Well, the originals were, so fabulous.
The Millennium Trilogy. Oh, that's how Numi Rapace became a star. She played Elizabeth Salander. Right. Of course, she didn't get very far. She unfortunately starred in those Alien, Covenant, and Prometheus movies. That was a dumb move because they bombed. But I like her. I've seen her in some dramas and some other weird horror. But as Lisbeth, she was amazing. That's an amazing character. And the tension between her and the older guy, who's the sort of mentor, sort of partner.
Oh, that was nice. Yeah.
Because it's kind of like sexual, but it's like no sexual at all.
Oh, I didn't pick that up.
Just energy.
Okay. All right. I didn't pick that up, but I could see how you would. No. So I threw that in there.
Well, us lonely old guys, we know our own,
No, but I thought it was really brilliant. It was very multi-layered, and I saw this whole interview where they were trying to do the other two movies, and it just never got off the ground. Politics, money, and then they tried to do another. I think they did The Girl Who Played with Fire or something like that.
Two other movies,
that was horrifying.
They did a movie that was adapted from one of the other books.
Right. It was the girl who kicked.
It was Rooney Mara. Rooney Mara played her in the David Fincher movie. Someone else played her in this other movie.
That's what I mean. And that person was bad. It was not a very good.
And then they made another one, which was like not a canonical sequel from the books.
Really?
Totally sank and bombed. I forgot the name. I think it was the same actress. So, they've tried to milk 3 American movies out of 3 great Danish television movies.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Stephen King and The Hospital. So The Hospital was called Stephen King's Kingdom Hospital. Okay, first of all, Stephen King did not create a single goddamn thing about Kingdom Hospital.
Right.
That was all created by Lars von Trier, and again, a Danish.
Oh, that's great. The Danish Copenhagen.
Danish one is incredible.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I saw some of the Stephen King, and I'm like, first of all, it's not yours. You didn't create this. You're trying to cash in and dumb it down for Americans, and it was really dumbed down. Second of all, who would want to own it? Because it's so terrible. The Stephen King's. I mean, I wouldn't put my name on it, even if I wanted money from it. But it should have been Lars von Trier's Kingdom Hospital remade by Stephen King, screenplay by Stephen King, whatever, But his ego is so enormous, that it just can't be contained on planet Earth's atmosphere. So I really liked what'd you say?
He could have put Stellan Skarsgård in it as well, because he lived in America for decades now. But
you know what?
Who discovered them? Lars von Trier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the True Blood guy. Is that the True Blood guy?
That's his dad.
Stellan
Skarsgård. Yeah, Alexander Skarsgård.
There's 3 of them. There's Bill. I don't know. They're sort of related, similar names. I don't know who's actually related to him.
I had no clue.
Alexander is Stallone's son, but it's funny because Stallone has probably had a very rough life, because you watch him in Breaking the Waves in the late 1990s.
Great film.
He looks young and long hair, and then you get to Thor 13 years later, and he's playing this elderly professor. He looks like he's been through fucking hell in every movie.
There's also an elderly professor, middle-aged, in Good Will Hunting. He's also in that.
Yeah. What was he in there?
He's a teacher in Good Will Hunting as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of his. It might be his first American one, but because
I have to see what
Breaking the Waves, I didn't finish seeing it. I'm really ashamed. I put it on my movie watch list. And I've seen a dozen Lars von Trier's, and of course, that's kind of the key movie of his. So, to be honest, I didn't finish. Honest to the audience and all of y'all, because this is an extremely depressing subject matter. I don't know if y'all have seen Breaking the Waves.
Yes, I have. Yeah,
it's really rough going, like mixing like tension about relationships, marriage, religion, sexuality, sexual functionality, and all this morality, and it's really. So Chuck, you managed to finish it. You get an award for this episode.
Which one was that?
Breaking the Waves.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I'm sorry. I have to break in. I'm sorry.
No, Heather.
My battery is dying on my phone, and I may lose you, but I'm going to try to find my charger.
Okay,
but
well, we're patient.
I'm low on battery life.
Well, do what you can. We're going to try to do at least one more review, but let's try to wrap up Justin's.
Yeah, I'm sorry to break in. I just, I'd hate to be rude.
Do what you have to do. If you have to come back,
do what you got to do.
Right? Thank you. Okay. I'm going to hang it.
Okay, so another reason I like this film a lot is I like the 1930s gangster genre as well. So I'm a big fan of
squarely in this topic.
Bonnie and Clyde. I like The Green Mile, which unfortunately is another Stephen King story, but another Tom Hanks film as well. But The Green Mile I thought was adapted very well to cinema, because often Stephen King films don't translate that well to cinema. Yeah. But I thought The Green Mile was excellent. And everyone likes Shawshank Redemption, which I do as well. But
that's one I haven't seen. That's a big gap for me. That's one
I prefer. I think I prefer The Green Mile slightly over the two. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen. I've read some of the book.
1930s Prohibition era, and they do touch on the Prohibition aspect, which I thought was quite good in Road to Perdition, because there's a scene where he's at a diner in the middle of nowhere, and he just gets his hip flask out, which is sort of taboo in Prohibition times. And Jude Law's character.
What a rebel!
Jude Law's character's at the next table, and he goes, "Oh no, sir, you can do what it doesn't bother me. You can do that."
That's hilarious.
So they have speakeasies, and they hide the pub away behind a curtain somewhere. And when you go behind the curtain in this apparently abandoned building, there's all these people dancing around, jazz music, drinking, making out, all sorts. So It was interesting. It's just such an interesting time. Yeah,
it was, man. That's awesome. But but America happened, so it ended.
That's right. Well, thank God it didn't last too long.
No, it didn't last. The 30s is a fascinating period because it's like a watershed between whole eras of human consciousness.
When they're going through an economic depression, you'd think that's the first thing you want to do is to make things a bit easier, is have a bit of a drink at the end of the day. But then they had prohibition at the same time. So
yeah,
it's heavy,
but a massive black market, of course.
And look at how much crime. I mean, that's why the war on drugs is a total fucking joke. It has been. It's all a joke. It's just a money launder for powerful oligarchs. I mean, you need to make them all legal. This is my official stand.
Agreed.
I can't speak for everyone, but legalize all vice, all harmless crimes. I do not want to go to prison for hiring a sex worker. I don't want them to go to prison either, and I don't want to go to prison for smoking marijuana, and I don't want the marijuana to go to prison either. I just don't think it's fair. It's just not right. But that's just my opinion. I don't mean to speak for everybody, but I think at this point it's common sense, because all the crimes people complain about are crimes people are forced into. So it's kind of like the movie I was talking about, Hunting Ground. It doesn't necessarily excuse the criminals, but oh wow, it got big. I hope Briggy comes back. It doesn't excuse the criminals, but it does give you a context, that it's a breeding ground. Once you criminalize this behavior, violence is inevitable, in some way or another, because you have to live outside the system. Like Bob Dylan said, to live outside the system, you must be honest, or to live outside the law, you must be honest. Yeah, that was another installment in our incredible series on crime films. We hope you enjoy what we're doing. If you do, drop a like on this video. And please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you watching. and we hope you have a good night. We've got more ahead. Thank you. Take care.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.